Tonight, Faith Nation sits down with the Secretary of State. From racism claims about the president to the fight for religious freedom, David Brody goes one-on-one with Mike Pompeo. Plus, lawmakers on Capitol Hill react to the president's attacks against 4 female congresswomen. His latest tweets out today. And the final second quarter numbers are in. A look at the candidates who made the most cash in their 2020 presidential campaigns. All that and more tonight on Faith Nation.
The Secretary of State sits down with CBN News for a deep dive on the administration's fight for religious freedom around the world.
And he's addressing some of the controversy facing the White House. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm Jenna Browder.
And I'm John Jessup. Secretary Pompeo is defending the president after an incendiary tweet many call racist.
Pompeo also says progressive congressional Democrats are, quote, deeply troubling. Today he sat down with CBN News chief political analyst David Brody. And David is here now with us for more.
David, much of the country has been looking for a response from the administration on these tweets. Today you sat down with Secretary Pompeo and asked him about it.
Right. We talked about the squad. We know all about the squad now, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and all of them. And they've said, at least according to the president and many others, troubling things about America. And so I wanted to ask Secretary Pompeo specifically about that because, after all, he is Secretary of State and he goes around the world promoting America. So what did he think about the squad's recent comments with the president? Have a look. I want to ask you a little bit more broadly about foreign policy. I know Joe Biden has been critical. I know that's politics, but Joe Biden's been critical of this administration's foreign policy. And then we have the squad that we hear so much about. A lot of what the president has said, anti-Israel rhetoric coming from these folks. What do you make of that as Secretary of State and what that message sends to folks around the world, especially Israel and some of our allies?
Look, when a handful of members of Congress say things that are in the tone of the fact that they blame America for so much of the trouble in the world, that's deeply troubling. As I stare at the problem set, whether it's work that we're doing in the Middle East or work we're doing to solve the problem of HIV/AIDS in Africa, or the reconciliation effort that we're underway with in Afghanistan, I watch America, I watch its motives. We are a force for good in the world, not a force for evil. We are not the cause of these conflicts. And I hear these members of Congress talk about this as if America had generated this trouble. And to blame America first for these things is deeply inconsistent with not only our founding and our tradition, but with the facts on the ground.
Of course, all of this started with an original tweet that many considered racist by the president. It's something I asked the Secretary of State about. Have a look. The president trusts you. You have a good relationship with him. He is shockingly under attack, let me think, all the time by the media and his critics, especially this week with some of the tweets that we've heard, and the R word, the racist word is used. So we've talked to him about that. What do you know about him as president that can speak to this issue about what we have heard so far this week about some of the tweets and some of the controversy surrounding this?
So I've worked for the president now for, goodness, almost 2.5 years now. And I've watched the work that we've done, first as CIA director and now as Secretary of State. His guidance to me has been very clear. Our mission is to build out American security. He talks about America first in lots of contexts. My mission, I'm the American Secretary of State, so my mission is to keep the American people safe. And each and every time we've talked about a particularly difficult situation or how to respond to a threat that's imposed on us, it's been about data and facts, coming up with a set of policy options that are achievable. That is, we believe you have to be realistic. You have to take the world as it is. You can't pretend that something else is going to transpire that you know is very unlikely. And we've worked on that. And he's done this in every country. He's done this regardless of the race of the individuals in that country, the religion. It is about delivering these good outcomes. We've built out amazing alliances. We've got the world to work with us on North Korea. We've had 60 countries help us make the lives better for the people of Venezuela. All of those projects that we're engaged in, we do this with other nations, and the president is fully supportive of this.
And so you're saying race has nothing to do with this?
I've never seen it. Yeah. Not once.
So, I mean, clearly those are the news of the day items, and there was a lot more we discussed throughout the interview.
David, one of those things, Pompeo recently announced the new Commission on Unalienable Rights. Tell us about that.
Right. So there's, according to Secretary Pompeo, which you'll hear in a moment, he talks about there's tons of rights out there. Well, what are American rights? So in other words, what are human rights? And they go back to the founding of this. And so that's what they're trying to figure out. What are human rights? Well, the women's groups and minority groups have pushed back to say, wait a minute, are you trying to roll back some of these human rights that we've heard about before? Secretary Pompeo addressed that. Have a look.
I'm really excited about what we're going to do with this commission. It's been a long time since the State Department has taken a good, hard look at the foundations, the rights, where they're grounded, how we think about those things that are essential to every human being. You know this, David. When you start to say that all thousands of things are rights, it diminishes these most fundamental freedoms. It diminishes these essential rights, the right to freedom of worship, the most powerful things that each create our dignity as human beings. And so we're going to go take a good look at that. We're going to ground it in the Founding Fathers' understanding. We're going to ground it in our Constitution. We're going to go back and look at what the last time that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights did its work. And we're going to more what we view here as human rights in the United States based on this historic fundamental set of understandings. We think this will improve, has the capacity to improve human rights and the understanding of human rights all around the world.
It's a potential controversy out there depending on how they define those human rights, so we'll watch that.
David, this is not your first time interviewing Pompeo. He talks a lot about his faith, and you've asked him about this in the past. It's something that's extremely important to him. It shapes him, it guides him, and it influences what he champions as a leader.
Right, especially on religious freedom, which of course is the reason for the ministerial this week. And I talked to him specifically about that, and some of his answer was very interesting. Because watch the first part of this answer. I think a lot of folks might have some issues with what he says about his faith and how he sees the Bible. Have a look.
Look, as a Christian, we have these fundamental understandings from the Bible that talk about how you treat other human beings. So whether it's the capacity to practice your faith as a Jew in a country around the world, or your ability to be a faithful practitioner of Islam somewhere in a country that you're a minority. Christians believe that that faith right, different from mine, but nonetheless your expression of your faith, fundamentally has a right to be expressed. And we want every country to do that. And so, yes, it's connected with my understanding of the world, and I think one that America has held dear since its founding as well.
When he talked about some of those Christian principles, detention centers came to mind. And I think a lot of people will question him if those are the Christian principles at play. So watch for some potential pushback on that. Finally, the ministerial conference, it'll be going on all this week. It brings all of civic leaders and faith leaders together, and here's how he explained it.
It's an important gathering. It's the second time we've had the opportunity to do this. We bring in leaders from all across the world, religious leaders, civil society leaders, government leaders, all aimed singularly at the focus of increasing the capacity for human beings to have the right to worship in the way they want, the way they choose, in every country in the world. And we know we're blessed here. It's our first freedom enshrined in the U.S. Constitution, but that's not the case everywhere. And our mission set is to highlight its importance, to educate leaders around the world about how important this is, how it can make your country better and stronger if you'll allow people of every faith to practice their faith, or if they choose not to, fine too. And it's a wonderful opportunity. There's small groups that'll gather and talk about particular issues, particular tactics, and then we hope throughout the year, just in this past year, there'll be groups meet all around the world to further this cause.
Full report on the 700 Club Wednesday morning, immigration, refugees, a lot more in the interview. We just don't have enough time here. Unless you want to give me a few.
Sure.
David, great interview.
Thanks.
Great job.
David.
Thanks.
All right.
Well, shortly after that interview with David, Secretary Pompeo officially kicked off the second ministerial, as you heard David just talk about, to advance religious freedom at the State Department. Day one included many emotional moments as victims of persecution shared their stories. CBN News national security correspondent Eric Phillips was there and joins us with more. Eric?
John, State Department officials say 80% of people around the world live in a religiously restricted environment. That's why they say the need is clear for a global human rights movement centered on religious freedom.
Religious freedom is universal and inalienable.
Organizers wanted to show the personal cost with this video of actual victims of religious persecution. The room packed with people representing nations and religions worldwide, so many wanting to attend that organizers cut off registration weeks ago because they'd reached capacity.
We've hit a nerve here that people want religious freedom and they want it now.
All people from every place on the globe must be permitted to practice their faith openly in their homes, in their places of worship, in the public square, and believe what they want to believe.
Unfortunately, one only has to go back 9 months to find examples of faithful suffering because of their beliefs. Some of those victims speaking here. October 2018, 11 killed at a Pennsylvania synagogue.
The perpetrator of the massacre in the Tree of Life not only stole 11 beautiful lives that he had no God-given right to do, but he stole the faith of countless Jews.
March 2019, 51 worshipers killed at a New Zealand mosque, including Fareed Ahmed's wife.
I had to go home alone. Then I had to tell my daughter that her mother would never come back home again.
Easter Sunday, 2019, suicide bombers killed 250, including many children in Sri Lanka.
And on that fatal day, when the Sunday school teacher questioned them, how many of you are willing to die for Jesus? Almost all of them raised their hands.
And we see it as a global crisis that has received far too little attention. A global crisis that we are determined to reverse.
And they hope this gathering, billed as the largest human rights and religious freedom event ever, will help spark that reverse. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says his own Christian beliefs compel him to fight for the freedom of others, not just in this country, but around the world, John.
Thanks, Eric. President Trump continues his attacks on Twitter. His latest tweets and the fallout from the past few days when we come back.
Introducing the CBN Bible from CBN.com. Now, an easier way to study the Bible and grow in your faith. Highlight your favorite verse. Read separate versions at a glance. Click and read a commentary. Or cross-reference your favorite verse using the Strong's Concordance. All the right tools to study the Bible, all in one place. The CBN Bible, available at cbn.com/Bible or the iTunes App Store.
It has the power to influence weight loss, boost your immune system, and improve brain function.
We've seen an explosion of data on the role of the gut microbiome in health.
The free Build a Better Gut booklet reveals the latest information about the gut microbiome. You'll discover how your gut affects the rest of your health.
The gut microbiome has been linked to depression and cancer and heart disease.
Learn how to build a stronger, healthier gut.
The microbiome, if it's in good composition, are really protecting us all the time from more invasive things.
Get the Build a Better Gut booklet, free from the Christian Broadcasting Network. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut.
You need to make sure that your microbes are working with you, not against you.
And if you order online, you'll get immediate access to the Build a Better Gut series, a digital copy of the booklet, and related bonus material. Build a Better Gut today. Call 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/buildabettergut for your free copy.
Here, we're committed to a heritage of rigorous scholarship dating back over 1,000 years.
And to a faith tradition dating back 1,000 more.
This is how we create a culture of inquiry where no topic is off limits.
And a culture of hope.
Anything's possible!
It's Christian leadership.
And it's changing the world for the better.
It's higher learning.
It's greater knowing.
It's what makes us whole.
It's what makes us Regent.
Welcome back. President Trump says he's not racist. It's his latest defense on his Twitter attacks on 4 progressive freshman lawmakers.
This is Democrats in the House prepared to vote to officially condemn his controversial tweets. CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the latest. Ben?
Well, Jenna, President Trump is showing no signs of backing down. Today, he stood by those remarks made towards 4 Congresswomen. The president denying the racist charges from Democrats and even some Republican lawmakers, tweeting, "Those tweets were not racist. I don't have a racist bone in my body." The so-called vote to be taken as a Democrat con game. Republicans should not show weakness and fall into their trap. This should be a vote on the filthy language, statements, and lies told by the Democrat Congresswomen, who I truly believe, based on their actions, hate our country. Well, he echoed that during his meeting today in the White House Cabinet Room. Take a listen.
When the Democrats didn't want to mention the name of the Congresswoman, not so long ago, and what they did and the way they're treating Israel is a disgrace. But not only Israel, it's what they say about our country. It's my opinion they hate our country.
And most Democrats have come out to denounce the president's words. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell and House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy stood by the president today, saying that, no, he is not a racist. John, Jenna?
All right, Ben Kennedy at the White House, thank you. Well, ABC News political director Rick Klein joins us now for more. Rick, your thoughts on the president's tweet and all of this backlash we're seeing?
I think a lot of people can spend time just trying to figure out, did he know what he was doing here? Did he know exactly what he was igniting? Because it has been quite a firestorm. And I think it's hard to read that tweet and not come away with the clear implications that these were freshman Democratic Congresswomen, women of color, 3 of whom were born in the United States, all 4 of whom, of course, are United States citizens, all 4 of whom were elected to the House, and to suggest that they go home has clear racial overtones to it. And I think you see that in the fallout and the backlash. Whether he knew what he was doing or not, whether he is now framing a debate in the way that he wants to have it is a different question. But I take the women at their words, and a lot of minority groups at their word, that when they hear words like that, they think it's racist.
Rick, there's debate on how to specifically label the president's tweets. Most news outlets have characterized them as racist. Can you tell us about how ABC News reached its decision and how it made its call?
I think when you look at the history of the phrase that was used and the way that it was received, that's when you get to the implication. And I don't think it's really on us to be offering labels for these things as much to be reporting out there. And I think people, when you understand the context of the remarks, people can make a judgment based on that. I think all of that is different than saying an individual is a racist. Right. To say that a comment is racist or a comment has racist overtones, I think is a different value judgment than to just go out and label someone as something.
That's an important distinction.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, he says President Trump is not racist. Mitch McConnell, many others coming out and saying the same thing. What kind of position, Rick, does this put Republicans in?
Well, I think you've seen most Republicans silent on this or trying to avoid comment on it. The ones who have spoken out, a lot of them are up for re-election next year, particularly in battleground states. A lot of them have been kind of typical critics of the president when he speaks out. People like Mitt Romney, who have quite often come out and weighed in on circumstances like this. But for a Republican Party that is struggling with minority voters, that is struggling with female voters, that is looking to appeal to a new generation of voters, this is not a helpful thing. It's not designed for that. And I think it's a problem if you're a Republican that's trying to reach out to minority communities to have a president saying things like this. Again, whether or not you say the president himself is a racist, these comments coming from the president have an impact.
Rick, we just have under a minute left. In 2020, Democrats are being asked about this on the campaign trail. Joe Biden told reporters that he would tell anyone, any voter who agrees with the president, that he's ashamed of them. How does a comment like that play out on the campaign trail, especially in places in the Rust Belt where Trump won in 2016?
I don't at all underestimate the probability that a lot of voters that the president is speaking to either agree with his sentiments or, maybe more importantly, think it's kind of humorous, and just an aside. So to equate that with shame, I think is a problem for Democrats because, by definition, they need people that voted for Trump last time to vote for the Democrat this time. Otherwise, they're going to lose again. You can't just replay 2016. And I think there's something more nuanced in that. And to say you're ashamed of the president or ashamed of the sentiments, I think is different than transferring that to the people that did the voting.
Rick, thank you so much for being with us and
sharing
your insights.
Thanks.
We'll be back right after the break.
Life. It's meant to be lived
fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life, life to the fullest. Life in your family, life in your finances, life in your body, mind, and spirit, life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com. Want to be a part of a community that inspires your spiritual growth while winning prizes? The all-new MyCBN app. Connect with the community for prayer and encouragement. Track and set spiritual goals. Enjoy conversation starters with friends and family. And collect points to win prizes. The all-new MyCBN app. A great place to belong. Download the app at cbn.com/mobile. Grow, connect, have fun. The all-new MyCBN app.
Watch breaking news, in-depth exclusive stories and programs, from health to entertainment, you won't find anywhere else. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Enjoy credible news reporting from around the world. Discover inspiring programs and stories of hope, all in one place, from a Christian perspective. The CBN News Channel, a perspective you can trust. Check your local listings or visit cbnnewschannel.com.
Come home to the sounds of Southern Gospel from CBN Radio. You'll enjoy a rich Southern blend of bluegrass, classic gospel, and Southern gospel favorites like the Gaithers, the Crab Family, and bluegrass sounds like Mountain Faith. So make yourself at home with the all-new CBN Southern Gospel, now available at cbnradio.com.
President Trump's pick to head the Defense Department is making his case for confirmation. Army Secretary Mark Esper today testifying before the Senate Armed Services Committee. In a rare moment of bipartisanship here in Washington, Esper was warmly introduced this morning by Virginia Democratic Senator Tim Kaine.
Character begets power, especially in hours of crisis. That is a quote that is about both individuals and also about nations. Over the past 2 years, my interactions with Dr. Esper have convinced me, have led me to the conclusion that he is a person of sound character and moral courage, which I believe are the most important traits of a Secretary of Defense.
In his opening remarks to the Senate committee, he outlined continuing with the same priorities of former Defense Secretary Jim Mattis. Well, should the government place more restrictions to rein in the power of internet giants?
And that was the question facing lawmakers as Silicon Valley made its way to Washington today. CBN News Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson joins us with that story.
That's right. Today, big tech came to Capitol Hill to face criticism over privacy issues and if a breakup could be in its future. Representatives from Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Google fielded questions in 3 different hearings in both the House and Senate.
You really think people should trust you with their bank accounts in our economy? I just think that's delusional.
Senators were united in highlighting major concerns over privacy protections as Facebook prepares to roll out its own cryptocurrency or digital money called the Libra.
You violated privacy in the past as a company. You continue to have issues. You continue to change the privacy even rules without informing users.
Senator Tom Cotton asked what confidence can those with center-right views who might want to buy things like firearms have that Libra will be available to them on an equal basis.
I believe that we should only get in the way in very exceptional cases and by being thoughtful of getting in the way of people doing what they want with their money as long as it's lawful.
With lawmakers on both sides echoing Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin's words of caution.
The Treasury Department has expressed very serious concerns that Libra could be misused by money launderers and terrorist financiers.
And in the Senate Constitution Subcommittee, Chairman Ted Cruz brought Google in for questioning on censorship, particularly of conservative voices and videos.
If they don't like what you're saying, they just hide what you're saying. That is essentially a fraud on the consumer, and they're deceiving the consumer because they've got a political agenda.
Over in the House Judiciary Committee,
if you don't want to use Google, there are many other information providers available.
Executives from Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Google made their case in the bipartisan antitrust probe, questioning their enormous market power.
And our competition isn't just here in America. We compete with companies from all around the world.
Congressman Ro Khanna, whose district covers Silicon Valley, tells CBN News he believes big tech needs to be regulated.
What's so important is that we regulate them to protect privacy, to make sure kids are safe online. So you shouldn't have young people online where they're getting creepy messages or being exposed to child pornography or being exposed to terrorism. And we need to have regulations to make sure that there is competition. But I don't think just breaking them up without more thought is a good response, because I want to make sure America leads the world, and China has a lot of these big companies.
Candidates are also taking on big tech on the 2020 campaign trail, with Senator Elizabeth Warren unveiling a regulatory plan to break up America's largest tech companies. Back to you, John and Jenna.
All right, Abigail Robertson on the Hill, thank you. Well, he wore it when he took one giant leap for mankind. And now for the first time in over a decade, Neil Armstrong's Apollo 11 spacesuit is on display. Coming up, its historic unveiling.
Tikkun Olam.
This is our nature as a country.
To make the world a better place.
Literally, we felt the earth shaking.
The Christian Broadcasting Network presents To Life, how Israeli volunteers are changing the world.
This film needs to be seen by everyone.
I was in tears. Now you can own the inspiring documentary To Life on DVD.
There is blood on our hands if we know and we walk away.
I'm so grateful that this film was made.
To Life can be yours for a gift of $10 or more. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com.
We know that every minute counts to save life.
It'll bless Israel, but it'll also bless all the friends of Israel.
Discover the untold story of how Israeli volunteers are making the world a better place. Call 1-800-700-7000 or log on to cbn.com to get your copy today.
Well, it was 50 years ago Neil Armstrong took one small step for man and a giant leap for mankind. Behind the first moonwalk, a team of scientists, engineers, astronauts, and one special suit.
Very special suit. Well, to mark the anniversary of the launch of the Apollo 11 mission, today Vice President Pence was on hand to unveil a new Smithsonian exhibit. The exhibit featuring the spacesuit Neil Armstrong wore when he took that giant leap.
The debt this nation owes to our Apollo astronauts, including the man who wore the suit that we unveiled today, we can never fully repay. But today is an installment. It took engineers, manufacturers, and technicians more than 10 years to design the 21 layers of fabric, rubber, metal, and fiberglass that just are encased in this spacesuit.
And that suit weighed 76 pounds, if you can believe that. It was last displayed 13 years ago. The Air and Space Museum here in Washington raised $500,000 in just 5 days to restore the historic outfit to mint condition.
Can you imagine walking around with 76 extra pounds?
76 pounds. That's incredible.
Although Patrick Robertson just said that it's in space, so that's a little bit
Good
different.
point.
Yep. Well, that does it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.